the Movies Past and Present podcast. It's March 6th, 2020, and this is episode 41. I'm your host, Stanford Clark, and I'm podcasting from the crossroads of the West in beautiful Salt Lake City, Utah. Just like my blog, moviespastandpresent.com, I'll be providing recommendations, commentary, and reviews about current and classic cinema. Thanks for tuning in, and let's do this thing. In the new movie roundup section, I'd like to talk about a couple of films that have opened up over the last couple of weeks, and then some films that are opening up today. So, in the last couple of weeks category is The Call of the Wild, which opened on February 21st, but still in theaters. This is an action drama from 20th Century Studios. I'll actually be reviewing this film on today's podcast. It's directed by Chris Sanders, and it's adapted from the beloved literary classic by author Jack London of the same title. And it tells the story of Buck the dog. Buck's a big-hearted dog whose blissful domestic life is turned upside down when he is suddenly uprooted from his California home and transplanted to the exotic wilds of the Yukon during the gold rush of the 1890s. So it's a classic, adventure film, but really told with some modern tools. It's I'm calling it a hybrid film, but it's got, of course, all the live actors in it, and lots of computer generated, probably a lot of backgrounds were done, as well as all of the animals in the film were computer generated. So it's interesting. Interesting use of visual effects and animation technology, and I'll be talking about that more in my review coming up. The Call of the Wild is rated PG by the Motion Picture Association for some violence, peril, thematic elements, and mild language. Last week, another horror film opened up. This time, it's another retelling of the story of the Invisible Man. Actually, I think it's its own take on the Invisible Man. Probably the main thing that it has in common with other versions of this film is that, of course, there is a man that's invisible who's in the movie. This one is produced by our current day master of the horror genre, none other than Jason Blum and his Blumhouse Productions. It's written and directed and executive produced by Lee Wanell, and I hope I'm pronouncing Lee's name correctly, who was one of the original conceivers of the Saw franchise, and who recently directed Upgrade and Insidious Chapter 3, all movies which I will never see in this life or the next. But the Invisible Man stars Elizabeth Moss, who's, a really great actress. Elizabeth plays a character named Cecilia, and Cecilia is trapped in a violent and controlling relationship with a wealthy and brilliant scientist. With the help of Cecilia's sister and one of her childhood friends, she escapes from the clutches of this horrible man. And however, so I guess, this boyfriend becomes her ex-boyfriend. But when this ex-boyfriend commits suicide, he leaves her a generous portion of his vast fortune. Cecilia suspects, however, that his death was a hoax, and as a series of eerie coincidences turn lethal, threatening the lives of those she loves, Cecilia's sanity begins to unravel as she desperately tries to prove that she is being hunted by someone nobody can see, aka the Invisible Man. If you've seen the trailers for this, you know that they're going for pretty much a straight horror type of film. The original film that came out in 1933, called The Invisible Man, it starred Claude Rains, and I think, they were going for some scares, but also it's kind of a special effects extravaganza. In this film, though, it sounds like they were really, from what I've read and what I've been told, that the cinematography really plays an important role. They didn't spend a lot of money on this movie. It wasn't a, you know, they made it in a pretty frugal fashion, but used a lot of interesting camera techniques is what really makes it, kind of sets the mood and makes it really scary. So anyway, this remake of The Invisible Man is rated R by the Motion Picture Association for some strong bloody violence and language. Okay, now opening this week in theaters, we've got 3 really interesting films, all different and unique in their own way. First up is ONWARD, which is an animated adventure comedy from Pixar Animation Studios. I'll be reviewing this film on the podcast today. But just as a quick overview, this is a film directed by Pixar veteran Dan Scanlon. Dan directed Monsters University for Pixar. And this film is set in a suburban fantasy world, and it's about 2 teenage elf brothers who are voiced by Chris Pratt and Tom Holland, who embark on an extraordinary quest to discover if there is still a little magic left out there. I'm excited to talk with you about it in the review, but needless to say, it's just got a lot of the very trademark type stuff from Pixar that we come to expect from Pixar Animation Studios. Really gorgeous, cutting edge animation, unique storytelling, and some authentic emotion. ONWARD is rated PG by the Motion Picture Association for action and peril and some mild thematic elements. Next up is Emma. Now, Emma's opened up a couple weeks ago in LA and New York, and now it's in wide release this weekend. This is from Focus Features and is based on the novel by Jane Austen, a very beloved novel, and there have been a lot of versions of this story that have been turned into movies and whatnot. I think a memorable one, more kind of in my generation, is it starred Gwyneth Paltrow, and it was made in 1996. Also, the year before, 1995, the movie Clueless is really, it's a loosely based retelling of Emma, set in a modern setting, but it's Emma. So for this version, it's directed by Autumn de Wilde, and this comedy, it's a beloved comedy about finding your equal and earning your happy ending, and from what it looks like in the trailers, it's been a bit reimagined, although still set in the same time period, but it looks like it's going to be kind of artsy and interesting. The press materials say, in this glittering satire of social class and the pain of growing up, Emma must adventure through misguided matches and romantic missteps to find the love that has been there all along. It stars Anya Taylor-Joy, Johnny Flynn, Bill Nighy, Rupert Graves, and a whole bunch of other, probably mostly Brits that are in this film. It looks promising, and I look forward to seeing it. It's rated PG by the Motion Picture Association for brief partial nudity. And then finally opening this week is a drama from Warner Brothers called The Way Back. This is a redemption story. It stars Ben Affleck of all people, and it's a bit interesting because I think in a way it's kind of a way back for Ben Affleck too, who's been having a very public battle with some addiction and some stuff. But as a summary, this film is about a guy named Jack Cunningham, who, when he was in high school, he had everything going for him. He was a basketball phenom. He could have punched his ticket to college or even the pros, but instead he chose to walk away from the game and giving up or forfeiting his future. Jack's glory days are long gone, but as it turns out, they're not forgotten. He years later, he gets the chance to take back his life when he is asked to coach the struggling basketball team at his alma mater. Jack reluctantly accepts, surprising no one more than himself, and as the boys start to come together as a team and win, Jack may get his last shot at redemption. The Way Back also stars Al Madrigal, Michaela Watkins, Brandon Wilson, some other actors that I don't know. And it's rated R by the Motion Picture Association for language throughout, including some sexual references. So, lots of interesting movies to possibly check out this weekend, and a wide variety of genres. The Call of the Wild, The Invisible Man, and then, of course, Onward, Emma, and The Way Back. Okay, so for reviews, as I mentioned, I'll be reviewing 2 films on the podcast today. First up is The Call of the Wild, that action drama I just talked about in the new movie roundup. So, as I mentioned, this film was directed by Chris Sanders. Now, Chris Sanders has got quite an interesting career. He started off as an animator and worked for Walt Disney Studios. In fact, he's the director of the film Lilo and Stitch, and he's responsible for that very distinctive look of that film and of the characters in that film. And then he was developing a film at Disney called American Dog, and this film morphed into the movie that we know now as Bolt. However, Chris Sanders left Disney during the making of the film, and he went to DreamWorks Animation. And at DreamWorks, he directed the first How to Train Your Dragon movie, and he also directed the family comedy The Croods, that caveman comedy. So I believe The Croods came out in 2013. So I don't know how long, what else he's been doing, but finally here in 2020, he's directed this really interesting hybrid retelling of The Call of the Wild. Now, The Call of the Wild, as I previously mentioned, is really the story of a dog named Buck, and Buck is just a big dog. And I read The Call of the Wild as a kid, and so it's been a while. So I really don't know I can't speak to how faithful this adaptation, is or was. But it sure seemed like it seemed pretty, faithful as far as just the overall feel about it. When I looked at saw the trailers, I had really wondered just initially, like, wow, those dogs sure look like they're CGI. And they are. So every animal in this film is created with computers. So no animals were harmed during the making of the film, because no animals were used in the making of this film, at least that I could tell. And I thought initially it was probably going to be something that I was not going to like, but believe it or not, it was well done enough and really used for good storytelling that I thought that the CGI animals were okay. They weren't actually as horrible as I was kind of anticipating them to be. So Harrison Ford stars in this film, and he's the narrator of the story, and he also plays the role of a guy named John Thornton, who we meet early on in the film, and then he plays, of course, a very significant role later in the film. And I'll keep this spoiler free in case you want to see it or read the book too. But Buck the dog is this movie takes place in the late 1800s. It opens up in California, and Buck is a dog of a very wealthy homeowner who's played by Bradley Whitford, who just is only in the movie for a couple minutes, but he's there as Buck's original owner, and Buck's a mess. Buck's a beloved dog, but he's just a destruction machine. Part of it's his size, and just also Buck's a dog with just a really big spirit. So, some nefarious dude sees Buck and wants to, and basically kidnaps Buck, for lack of dog naps Buck. And although Buck's been really naughty, and I don't think that Bradley Whitford is going to be missing Buck, because Buck's been a really bad dog and done a lot of destruction at this house. But Buck gets shipped off up north, up into the Yukon, and becomes a male sled dog, where he's part of a pack and delivering mail to icy regions in the Yukon. But he meets he encounters Harrison Ford again, or this character of John Thornton, and Harrison Ford as his character, John is suffering in his own way. He's had some real hardship in his life, and so he's kind of just gone up north to hide, or to just go up there and maybe even drink himself to death. But John saves Buck, and Buck saves John, and they go off and have a big adventure. And really, it's the Call of the Wild, or Buck the dog's finding himself and finding his place in the world. The photorealistic CGI that they used, they put enough. One good thing about this film is that the dogs don't talk, and that's a direction I think they could have easily gone. Just the dogs amongst themselves, they would talk. But they don't. But they really worked on making their faces and their eyes quite expressive. And it steps up it's a fine line, and I think that the filmmakers did it okay. They gave the animals enough emotion in their faces that you could, they could communicate, rather than just like a blank stare, or something that was a little less subtle. And I hate to compare it, but I kind of just kept thinking about Disney's The Lion King CGI remake that they did last year, and I hated that film. But and part of the reason too was that they were going for so much photorealism that there was like almost no emotion. They still though could rely on actors for voicing these characters, whereas this Call of the Wild didn't have any of the the kind of the narrative advantage of having a voice with these all these dog characters. But again, I thought the animation was okay. And some of the motions and some of the things they did were a little cartoony, but overall they did it. The one thing too that I thought actually was quite nice about it was with these photorealistic CGI animals, they still tried to make the natural world really beautiful, and that was also something beautiful yet really stylistic. And For example, there's some scenes that take place at night in this film, and they've got the northern lights going on, which of course I just love that. I just thought it was beautiful. But that also really, they used it to their advantage as far as creating the scene and setting up the proper emotional resonance. Whereas I thought with the Lion King remake that Disney did, there's none of that. I mean, clearly it looked like you were there, in Africa, very realistic looking, but they didn't even kind of ramp up some of that stuff in nature, or exaggerate it a little bit to set the mood, or bring out some really cool artistry. So, I didn't hate this film. I thought it was a pretty solid family film, maybe a little slow in parts, but Harrison Ford is great, and you really, you're rooting for Buck, the CGI dog, to stay alive and be happy. The cast also includes Dan Stevens, and Karen Gillian shows up. They're not in a lot. They kind of play a pivotal role, but it's weird. They're just hardly in it at all. Omar Sy, Colin Woodall. So, interesting cast, even though the main person who's in it is Harrison Ford. But good family film, and pretty cool use of CGI to help really used as an interesting storytelling device. I give this film 3 out of 5 stars, and think it could definitely be worth your while if you're interested. One final thing, I saw a review of this movie, and it was done by a critic who is a big animal lover, and he didn't really love this movie because again, no animals were used. They were all computer generated. So it would have been a very different film had live animals been used, but interesting film nonetheless. So anyway, check out Call of the Wild if you're so inclined for that sort of thing. Next up in reviews is the Pixar film Onward. Onward is really a weird and wonderful film. Pixar, really, I think, excels at making these high concept films that are pretty heady and almost to the level of bizarre. Yet they work, and they're entertaining and fun to watch. And they use animation, which is really cool, because they're telling these stories that, again, are really great in this different kind of medium, rather than just either a live action or a live action CGI hybrid. So in case you haven't seen the trailers for this movie is set in a what they call a suburban fantasy world. So this is a world where there are elves, which these main characters are elves. There are like mermaids and unicorns and centaurs and all these different things, and the architecture is very fanciful. But it was a world where there was magic, literally, magic. There were these magicians that had these, wooden staffs and these crystals, and they learned they could do magic with these things. But and I'll give it to keep the spoiler free, but I think this is stuff that's pretty much introduced in the trailers. But this magic kind of gives way to technology and ease. So So, they show like something like the magicians are doing these spells to create light, but then one of these people in this world invents electricity. And so that's like a game changer, because it's just so easy rather than having to learn the magic and whatnot. Technology takes over, and it's a world very much like the world we live in, where there are cities and cars and indoor plumbing and suburbia, and so this movie really is about the two brothers, and there's an older brother that's voiced by Chris Pratt, and then this younger brother who's voiced by Tom Holland, and they're kind of polar opposite. The Chris Pratt character, he's the older one, and he's probably, my guess is he's like kind of 18 or 19. Maybe they say the ages of them in the film, of him in the film, I don't remember. And then the younger brother, and his name is Ian. No, I'm sorry. Chris Pratt's, the older brother's name is Barley. Tom Holland, who's the younger brother, his name is Ian. And Ian, the film opens, it's his 16th birthday. And so they have a mom who is voiced by the great Julia Louis-Dreyfus. And their dad sadly died when little Ian was in the womb. So Ian never met his dad, and Barley has some vague memories about his dad, but he was so young when he died. And so it turns out, though, that when both boys were older than 16, so it needed, Ian needed to turn 16 in order to get this gift. The mom gets this gift that the dad had asked, his wife to give the boys. And it turns out that it's one of these magic staffs and a crystal with a spell. And the spell is that the dad will be able to come back to life for technically for 24 hours. Well, if I'm saying this right, I think it's from sundown to sundown. It might be from sunup to sundown, but I think, clearly sundown though is when the dad goes away. So they start the spell, as you've probably seen in the trailer. Actually, it's Barley who's trying to say the spell, and it doesn't work. But Ian says a spell, and he's able to get the magic staff responds to him, and he's able to get this started. So the dad starts appearing from the ground up. So his shoes first appear, and then his legs, and he's wearing pants. But it ends up stopping this crystal breaks and the spell stops halfway. So the dad the only thing that's showing up are the dad's legs. And so a big important plot device, I guess you could call it, is that Barley, the Chris Pratt brother, he is like a big fan of it. To me, it's like it's a representation of Dungeons, the role-playing game of Dungeons and Dragons. And so, which again is not only a game, but the way that the game was created, there's some truth in it, as we find out, of how this world that they live in used to be before, technology and gentrification and all this stuff kind of just turned everybody off onto magic and just onto living living just kind of a normal, quiet life. So Chris Pratt's character, Barley, thinks he knows, based on this information from the game, what he needs to do to go get them another crystal and to help finish the magical re-rendering of the dad's body, and so that they can actually see and interact with their dad before the spell ends at sundown. So it's basically at its core a buddy movie, even though it's just it's the two brothers. Barley has this ridiculous but fantastic van that he's painted a big unicorn on it, and I mean it's quintessential, kind of this airbrushed fantasy kind of look, but the van is just a total piece of crap, but still funny and relatable. And we've all, I think, probably been in vans like these or owned them. Remind me of I mean, my parents didn't have a unicorn painted on their van, but just the way of it just reminded me a lot of that type of a vehicle. But this is a really, again, I'm saying it's kind of a weird film, and it takes a while to get it going. At least it took a while for me. But once it clicks in, particularly during its third act, it's just Pixar at its best. Some of the story points, even though it moves the story along, I think it's it was a bit slow for me, to be honest with you. But as I mentioned, once it gets into the final third of the movie, it really had me. And of course, given the nature that these guys are trying to bring back their dad that they didn't know, it's emotional. And they play a lot of it for laughs. It kind of reminds me of almost like a Weekend in Bernie's, where they're dealing with this dead body. The dad can walk. He can walk, but he can't talk. And he communicates a little bit with his feet, but he's mostly just kind of there, and they just really have to watch him. They've put on a dog leash on him. And sometimes they carry him. I think my favorite is when Barley would put the dad's legs up on his shoulders like he's carrying a little kid. But of course the animation's great. Pixar always is stellar with it. The voice talent is really good. As I mentioned, Chris Pratt and Julia Louis-Dreyfus are so good. Tom Holland kind of steals the show, I think, in it. Actually, he's very good. But Octavia Spencer has a role, and they've got an interesting cast, and of course John Ratzenberger also shows up a bit, because what would a Pixar movie be without him? And lots of laughs, and some tears too, but they're good tears. And I think if you like Pixar, I think you're gonna enjoy. You're going to enjoy Onward. I can't say that it's necessarily Pixar's best film. It's certainly not the worst, and it's very entertaining, very very heartwarming, and again, a really really good story about two brothers. Classic Cinema Corner, I just want to give a quick shout out to the Turner Classic Movies Classic Film Festival that's happening April 16th through 19th in Hollywood. I've got my pass to go, and I'm really excited about it, and grateful to get to go again this year. The theme is Grand Illusions, Fantastic Worlds on Film. And they just do a wonderful job with this film festival. They work directly with the Hollywood studios, the world's most notable film archives and private collectors, and they just bring some of the most revered movies of all time, many with new restorations, as well as some long-lost gems, and show them on the big screen. And it's just terrific. Now, they announced this week that they are still planning to move ahead with the festival, even with the coronavirus challenges that are going on. And we'll see again, maybe closer to it, they're gonna change their mind, but they say they're still gonna hold the festival. So, yay, hooray, and let's keep our fingers crossed. This week they announced some interesting additions to the lineup. Julie Andrews is going to be there, and she's been at the festival before, but she's going to introduce a screening of her musical comedy Victor Victoria. And Mel Brooks is going to be there again this year, which is awesome. He's been there in the past, and I saw him introduce his film High Anxiety, which just being in the same room with Mel Brooks was just amazing, because that guy has got so much energy, and he's just so funny. He's going to be introducing his sci-fi spoof Spaceballs. Russ Tamblyn is going to be there, and he's going to be in attendance for a screening of Seven Brides for Seven Brothers. Actress Margaret O'Brien will be attending for a screening of her film The Secret Garden from 1949. I mean, holy smokes. Disney animator Floyd Norman's going to be there. He's going to be introducing The Jungle Book, and as well as The Sword and the Stone. Sadly, and I'm a little bummed about this, they announced this week that they were going to screen the 1973 animated film Robin Hood, that Disney did, but that's no longer going to be presented as previously announced. I don't know why, but it's a bummer. They're going to show a lot of cool pre-code films too, and they just have such an interesting variety, and always with interesting guests and hosts to present, and it's really a fantastic event. So if supposedly they still have some tickets available, I will put a link. They say, but supplies are limited. I'll put a link to the website in my podcast notes, so you can check out the prices and the levels of these passes, and as well as the availability. And then also you can learn more about the announced special guests and films and presentations too. I'll have the link to the website on my podcast notes. So, yay, hooray for the TCM Classic Film Festival, and I'll be keeping you updated more on what's going on with plans for it and how it turns out. Well, that does it for this episode of the Movies Past and Present podcast. Again, links and more information about all of the movies discussed in today's podcast can be found in the podcast notes on my blog at moviespastandpresent.com. As always, I hope you will enjoy some good movies this week, whether they be from the past or the present. Until next time, thanks for listening, and see you at the movies.
Bye.